Speak on the show, episode 31. It's an unscripted Saturday, y'all. Y'all ready? Let's go and get this party started. Let's go. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Speak On It. I'm your boy, R.W. Coolins. First and foremost, giving honor to God who allows me to come at you in this manner on a weekly basis. Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. How's everybody this morning? I have to let you know, and I have to go out here, and I just want to say thank you one more time for all the love, all the appreciation, all the callers, family members, because I call y'all family, all the listeners and everybody who decided to call in last week for the show for the 9-year anniversary is truly appreciated. I'm still a little overwhelmed, overjoyed, and it's still with me. And I appreciate everybody called in and had the kind words to say and talk about the show, the impact of the show, and how they continue to listen to the show and how I'm providing something that you may not get from other sources. So I truly appreciate that. Appreciate everybody taking the time out to show a brother some love. Me and my, I have my assistant with me, my lady was with me last week. So I appreciate her sitting in for the moral support and everything. So I truly appreciate Miss Pamela sitting in with me and everybody, giving the shout outs and everything like that. So let's get these formalities out the way. rwcoolins.com. That's the website. You can go there and get everything you need, everything you want. All the links are there where you can click on to, get to the Facebook, YouTube. We're also broadcast live on Facebook and YouTube as usual this morning. So if you want to go there, make your comments, send your comments in, do what you got to do. Also, after the show, I don't know what's going on this morning. After the show, you can go ahead and download on Spreaker.com or Apple iTunes and listen to the audio. So it's up to you how you want to do it. But hey, this is what we do every Saturday morning, y'all. Phone number, call in number 844-904-2665, 844-904-2665. No matter what the situation is, let your voice be heard. All we ask is that you say what you mean and mean what you say. If you decide to call in, we come in as friends, we leave as friends. That's what we do on the Speak On It show. My man OT, good morning, bro. Appreciate the support. Great interviews yesterday. I was able to catch them. Great interviews, bro. Keep doing what you're doing. People follow OT radio show. He's doing big things with interviews with a lot of different people, a lot of artists, authors, entertainers. Today, I think he's interviewing David Arnold sometime today, a comedian. So if you want to check that out, should be a funny interview. I think it's at 12:15 sometime in there. OT, if I'm wrong, correct me, but I think it's 12:15 on the OT Radio Show Network. So make sure you go check him out. All right. Unscripted. Today is one of those days, y'all. It's an unscripted Saturday. And the reason it's unscripted is because, this week, we've seen a lot of things going on, but for me, I didn't watch a lot of news this week. Listen to some things here and there and things jumping out. I did hear that the George Floyd Policing Act discussions are over. We don't know when they're going to come back to the table. Nothing was agreed upon. All the different things you can think about as far as what we've been trying to do with the George Floyd Policing Act, and it's right back where it started at zero. So that's something we need to keep an eye on. They couldn't come to some kind of agreements or whatever. I think it was Cory Booker on the Democratic side and Tim Scott on the Republican side, and they had other people in there, but they couldn't come to an agreement. Now, my question would be, if you can't come to an agreement about the George Floyd Policing Act, what is the sticking point? What is the reason why you can't come to some type of agreement to get this act put into play? Just me. But after seeing what happened, after they talk about, and I think one of the biggest things is going to be the immunity, the blanket immunity that a lot of police officers get. I think that's one of the main sticking points with the union, the police union, and things like that. I'm going to go out on a limb. I didn't read up on it, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you I did, but I'm going to go out on a limb because I don't think they even came out and said what the sticking points were and why they couldn't come to an agreement. But I want to go out on a limb and say that 9 times out of 10, one of the main sticking points was the immunity for police officers being taken away and having them have to stand trial for crimes that they commit while being a police officer on duty. Also, the Voting Rights Act. We still haven't heard anything on that. That's still just in limbo. We haven't heard anything. The debt ceiling, one of the biggest things they're talking about is the debt ceiling and the infrastructure bill, which is $3.5 trillion that they're trying to, sign in to get us to be able to fix the roads, fix the infrastructure, internet, all the different things you can think about that deal with the infrastructure. There's a $3.5 trillion bill out there for that they're trying to vote on, and that's going back and forth. Also, they're talking about a government shutdown. Now, the government shutdown is, comes around this time every year where they got to fund the government, and what they're funding the government for is not for what's coming up, but what we paid, what we're in debt for in the past, and that needs to be paid. So what we're trying to pay for, and what the Republicans are pushing back for, and the Democrats are having an issue with, is the fact that the money that was $29 million that we're in debt right now that needs to be paid, they're balking on paying it, and then coming up with a new budget. Continuing resolution is probably what's going to happen, so the government doesn't get shut down, and they're going back and forth about that. But on this $29 million that we're in debt right now, that includes that tax cut for the rich and the wealthy, that is included in there. But of that $29 million, Donald Trump and some of his policies were responsible for $9 trillion. $29 trillion we're in debt. Some of his policies were responsible for $9 trillion, and the Republicans don't want to pay the money, or don't want to give the money up to actually go pay this debt by pulling it from the Treasury. There's a lot of intricacies in there that I didn't read about, but that's the basics of it. You have to ask the question, and I've said this many times before, if you have a income at your home, which you deal with, and you know what your income is, and you have a debt to income ratio, you do what you need to do to maintain a certain level of debt compared to income. But it seems that the politicians and the government thinks that they just have a blank check that they can continue writing over and over and over again. And then when we come to this point where the bills have to be paid, they balk back and forth at each other and point fingers at each other, Democrat, Republican, or whatever. But what they're not looking at, and what we don't understand, is the big picture is it falls back on us. It falls back on us, the American citizens, because we're the ones that are suffering. I want you to think about this. If the government is to shut down next week because they didn't come up with a continuing resolution, or come up with a budget for the next fiscal year, or approve the budget, let me say that. Think about how many federal government employees are going to be affected. Not infected, but affected. Think about how many are going to be affected. Think about all the military members that are going to be going to work and not getting paid. And some federal workers will be doing the same thing because they have mission essential jobs. Think about all the people, all the government entities that you go to, Social Security Administration, all the different things you have to do business through that will be shut down because there is no money, or they haven't done the budget or approved the budget for the money. All these things are impacting. Now, mind you, we did shut down at one time. I think it was over the holidays, but it was through the holidays, so a lot of people weren't going to work anyway. And this was back, I think, in 2018 or 2019. We shut down for, I think it was like 2 weeks. The bottom line is, the government, politicians are holding us hostage every year that this comes around to say whether they're going to sign into a bill, whether they're going to put the money up to do what they need to do to pay debt, to continue to fund different organizations, so on and so forth. If the government shuts down, we've been talking about this pandemic. We've been talking about how people have lost their jobs. We've been talking about all these things over the last year and a half. And we're still at a point where our politicians are threatening to do a government shutdown for the simple fact that they feel that it's the other side of the aisle's fault that the debt is so high. This is where we're at. This is what we're doing. This is where we have to pay closer attention to who we're putting in these positions when we go to the polls. This is where we're at right now. Not a good look. Not a good look whatsoever. And I know a lot of you are waiting for me to talk about the border and everything, but we're going to get into that a little later. So just hold on for me. But the reason I bring up these politicians is because I've seen something again this week dealing with politicians that I've reported on many times on here. I've seen and I've talked about, but we have 7 U.S. House lawmakers, 4 Democrats and 3 Republicans are being investigated by the ethics group for failing to report stock trades. Now, this is something that's been going on and on and on, but these are the ones, watch this now, these are the ones being investigated on the ethics violations for not reporting their stock, income and different things like that, where they contribute to the stock market and everything. They're not reporting it in time, or they're not reporting it at all, a certain amount of money. But these are the same ones that are supposed to be signing into law and signing these legislation for the debt to go up, to pay the bills, to do what we have to do, the Policing Act, all the different things I just talked about, the Voting Rights Act. All these people are the ones that are supposed to be in there pushing to do what they're supposed to do for the people. And we can't even get them to do what they're supposed to do legally, and they're bound by being in the Senate and the Congress to report when they make money off stock trades. 7, 4 Democrats, and the parties aren't exempt. 4 Democrats, 3 Republicans right now. The ethics complaints filed Wednesday are against Souza, Democratic Rep. What's his name? Souza. Well, I'll give you all the names. Democratic Rep. Cindy Axne of Iowa, Republican Rep. Warren Davidson of Ohio, Republican Rep. Lance Gooden of Texas, Democratic Delegate Michael San Nicolas of Guam, Democratic Rep. Bobby Scott of Virginia, and Republican Rep. Roger Williams of Texas. All 7 of these people who are up there supposed to be enforcing laws and legislature and all these different things aren't reporting the money that they're making, which is something that was put into law called the Stocks Act. Axne didn't file any PTRs in 2019 and 2020, and the center's complaint indicates it found more than 40 assets with a total value of $43,000 up to $645,000 not reported. The complaint against Davidson lists the sale of Workhorse Group stock worth between $50,000 and $100,000 in 2020, but notes no disclosure form was filed. Gooden's annual financial disclosure reflects a dozen stock purchases: American Airlines, APA Corp., Royal Caribbean, Delta, Hertz, Luckin Coffee, Marathon Oil, all these different ones that were valued between $60,000 and $376,000 in 2020, but no PTRs were filed disclosing the initial investments, according to the complaint. PTRs means, I think I didn't write that down, but let's continue here. San Nicolas failed to file reports for 2 trades, according to the complaint. One in 2019 for a call option in Yamana Gold, and one in 2020 for living stock value between $15,000 and $52,000. Scott did not disclose 4 stock transactions in 2020 worth between approximately $4,000 and $60,000. These were purchases for air products and chemicals. Suozzi failed to disclose about 300 transactions from 2017 to 2020, according to the complaint, with a value of 3.2. Let's get this right. With a value of 3.2 million to 11 million. With a value of 3.2 million to 11 million, he didn't report. This included roughly 64 transactions in 2017, valued between $456,000 and $1.8 million. 31 transactions in 2018, valued between $528,000 and $1.4. 104 transactions in 2019 worth 1.1 million and 3.8 million, and 104 in 2020 worth between 1.1 million and 4 million. He disclosed the trades on annual disclosures, but did not file the PTRs. Williams did not file PTRs for 3 stock sales in 2019. The complaint lists sales of 3 assets by a spouse in 2019, worth a total value of approximately $3,000 to $45,000. NPR, who I got this information from, reached out to all 7 members for a response to the complaints. None of them really responded. One of them did a written complaint. Gooden dismissed the complaint, saying there were no transactions above the reporting threshold for PTRs, which is why none were filed. I would encourage anyone filing frivolous ethics complaints to consult page 41 of the 2020 Financial Disclosure Guide regarding the rule on PTRs. Seven of your political members, 4 Democrat, 3 Republicans, are not reporting their stocks, and there's no consequences. They'll pay a small fine, but that's about it. But in the same breath, these people are making money while they're there. There's something that says they need to report it because it shows that there's not any type of, what do they call that? Where they're crossing the line. Because, you got lobbyists and all that kind of stuff. But it shows there's not any backdoor stock trades being done, and they're not pulling stocks, like the people in Georgia were doing during the election. But what throws me about this is the fact that it seems like it's normal practice. And these are the people that are supposed to be out there looking for the good and the welfare of the masses. But as long as they're making the money that they want to make for themselves, that's all they're concerned about. Because for this to be an issue, it's just like if you didn't pay your taxes and then come looking for you. There's a lot of things you can't do if you don't pay your taxes. If you haven't shown that you've paid taxes in a while, you might not be able to buy a house if you're ready to buy a house. But our politicians feel that they're above the law, so they do what they want to do. They got insider trading information that they use. Now, you can't tell me they don't. I'm just going to put it out there. In order to make this type of money off the stocks. And what I didn't mention, and I forgot, an oversight on my part, 5 of these 7 lawmakers, watch this now, 5 of these 7 lawmakers who refuse, who and I'm just going to put it like that, who refused to report the money they were making off of stock trades, serve on the House Financial Services Committee. Let me say that again. 5 of the 7 lawmakers in this ethics violation sit on the House Financial Services Committee, which is one of the most powerful committees that deals with the finances of this country. 5 of the 7 sit on that committee. 5 of those 7 people sit on that committee and are making legislation that affects you and me. And they can't take the time to report, or they choose not to report, what money they're making in stock trades and inside. I keep saying insider trading. I don't want to accuse them people insider trading. Yes, I do. They continue doing insider trading, stock trading, and everything like that. But my biggest thing is, if you're not reporting it, what are you hiding? Why are you not reporting it? But they sit on the House Financial Committee. Keep that in mind. Now, here's another one that we can't get these things passed. We can't get these things done that are supposed to be done on a consistent basis. But we got people out here doing what they want to do when they want to do it. Good morning, sis. Appreciate your support. We got people out here doing their own thing. Representative Lauren Boebert, Colorado. I guess that's how you now pronounce her name. I don't pay too much attention to her, because you know how that works. Ethan Johnson. So who are the ones with the integrity issues? Integrity issues. Well, bro, I don't see there is any integrity in the Congress and the Senate anymore. In our political process as a whole, the integrity has gone out the door. Case in point. Good morning, Brian. Brian Hoodie, good morning. Good morning. Appreciate the support. Lady Michelle, appreciate the support. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So, case in point, Representative Lauren Boebert. I can't pronounce her name. Not too worried about it. Boebert is what I'm pronouncing. She used campaign funds to pay rent and utility bills. Oh, I thought y'all had a question about why that's important. She used campaign funds to pay rent and utility bills. Now, this is a person who's a representative in the House. She used campaign funds to pay rent and utilities. The people that have donated to her campaign, she used their money for her own pleasure to pay rent and utilities. Now, when I see these things, I start asking myself, wait a minute. If you're taking campaign funds and using them for personal expenses, what were you doing before you even thought about getting campaign funds? Who was paying your rent? Who was paying your utilities? How were these things getting paid if you have to use taxpayers' donations to your campaign to pay your bills? But I digress. Let me continue. According to a filing her campaign made Tuesday with the Federal Election Commission, the submission claims the lawmaker already has reimbursed the campaign and that those transactions will appear on a report due in October. So basically what they're saying is she filed this showing that she paid utilities and everything, but they put a little sub note in there saying that it's already the campaign fund has already been reimbursed for the money that she took out. So I'm going to ask this question here. If I work at a grocery store and I decide to take some money out of the register, per se, I decide to take some money out of the register, a couple $100 maybe, give or take. And when I tell them or they call me and say, hey, we got you on camera taking money out the register, what's going on? And I say, oh, you know what? I got that money right here. I was going to pay it back today. How do you think that company's going to receive that? Is it the fact that they're going to receive it because I have the money to pay it back at this time? Or is it the fact that I took money that wasn't of me and didn't belong to me for my own personal use until I had the money to put back at a later date? In most cases, Jeff Carey, good morning, bro. Most cases, you get fired. And depending on the extent, they could take you to court for embezzlement because you're taking money that is not yours from a company that didn't authorize you to take it. So I'm trying to figure out why and what are the loopholes, because this is not the first case we've heard of this. We've heard it with Donald Trump. We've heard it with all kinds of different politicians where they're taking and using campaign funds that taxpayers donate to their campaign for their own personal use. And no one has a problem with this, even though she paid it back. Embezzlement, theft, criminality, these are the people that we're sending to House of Representatives and the Senate. Because why? Because we don't do our research. Now, let me tell you this. What they said was the money, two of the disbursements, each for $2,000, are now described as rent billed to campaign via Venmo in error. That's what they wrote in there. While the other two were categorized as rent and utilities. The document reiterated that all four transactions have been reimbursed. After each Venmo disbursement, the updated filing now includes payments with the same amounts, dates, and descriptions to someone named John Pacheco, whose address is listed as 120 East 3rd Street in Rifle, Colorado. Now watch this. That's the same address as Shooter's Grill, a restaurant that Boebert owns. So this representative owns this restaurant called Shooter's Grill. The money that she took and the money that she distributed through her account to pay this bills and rent and utilities was to the owner of the building that she's renting to have the Shooter's Grill in. What are we doing? She took money, taxpayers' money. If you donated to her campaign, you ought to feel duped. But she took that money to pay rent, not in a place that she's living in DC because it's high or anything, but she's sending that money that she got from you back to Colorado to cover the expenses to continue to keep her Shooter's Grill open. That's what they're doing with your campaign money. Ethan Johnson, I know this is wrong. However, I hope neither of those bills go through this week. The entire thing needs to fail because they have failed the American people. Yeah, the bills, they're not the best bills. And then we're changing a little bit, y'all. So hold on. We'll get back to Miss Boebert. in a minute. But the bills he's talking about is the $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill, the bill for the government to stay open. And no, they're not the best bills. I've read a little bit on what's included in the bills. There's a lot of fluff in there, and it's not good for the American people. But the one bill that needs to be passed is the one to keep the government and the government operating. And for a lot of people that don't know, the federal government is the largest employer in the United States of America. So anytime the government shuts down, you're talking about millions of people being without jobs. Now you'll say, well, during the pandemic, you had people, and I'm just going to throw it out there, you had people working for the government, working from home. Some people never went into work for the whole time this pandemic was going on, and they were still getting paid. Yeah, that's some of the flaws in the system. Let's just be real. There's some of the flaws in the system. But what about the people that were still working throughout this whole pandemic, that were going in every day, and now they may not get a paycheck and they're mission essential and they're going to work for free. So when you talk about this, I mean, this budget part of it happens the same time every year. The same time. September 30th ends the fiscal year. October 1st starts the new fiscal year. Happens the same time every year. And we deal with this every year. And we're not getting better at what we're doing when we get to this point. Because why? Because the people that aren't affected are the people that are writing the legislation and approving the debt and the debt ceiling limits that we need to keep the government open. But we keep putting them back in and over and over again. Ethan Johnson, nope, needs to fail. They won't change until it affects everyone. They are all thieves and crooks holding up the American taxpaying people. Well, and you know what? You have a good point. I mean, but here's the other part of it that we have to look at. Don't get me wrong. I don't agree with the processes that they use, and I never will. But at the same time, I have to look at the amount of people that are going to be impacted by them not just passing something. And this may sound bad coming from me because I'm not a true believer in this, but something is better than nothing when you talk about people's livelihood. Because now when you start shutting down the government and taking away people's money and different things like that, now you're dealing with the livelihood. We just dealt with this through the pandemic, and it's the same effect. You still got people out of work, not because they don't want to work. Let's clear that up too. It's not because they don't want to work. And I'll give you an example of this. And I'm going to, this is unscripted, so I'm going to go all over the place today, so y'all bear with me. But when I say you got people out here that want to work and can't work or can't find a job or anything like that, I want you to look at this scenario that I'm going to give you right here. The next time you go to your local grocery store, Walmart, any of that kind of stuff, and you're in there and you're pissed off because there's only 2 registers open. And then you look and you see a line at the self-checkout for people to scan their own things because there's only one person that's standing there to help you out if something goes wrong, but the other registers is only 2 and there's a line there because people don't want to scan their own groceries. And then you ask yourself, there's like 30 to 40 registers up in front of Walmart. I'll just use Walmart for an example, or your grocery store. It might be about 5 to 10. But there's only 2 registers open other than to scan your own thing. My question to you would be, if you had all those registers at one time that were being occupied, and now there's nobody behind those registers, is it the fact that people don't want to work? Or is it the fact that these companies aren't employing more people as well as they say they are? They can put job announcements out. Doesn't mean they're fulfilling the roles that they've announced for people to apply to. See, we have to look at the big picture. We get pissed off at the people that are working in the store when we don't see them at a register, but we see them doing something else. But we don't know the concept of why they're doing what they're doing and not doing what we think they should be doing. We get pissed off when we see people talking about they can't find a job, or they're unemployed, or their unemployment insurance is running out, and all these different things. We get pissed at them, but we don't look at the big picture about what's not being done to help these people. This bleeds into, I'm gonna hold off on that. Let me hold off. So we continue to reward for bad behavior. That's what this country was built on, bro. Rewards for bad behavior. This is not anything new to us. It's just we're more cognizant because we're paying attention. We're watching. We're understanding how the processes should work compared to how they are working, or the lack of work that they're doing. That's where the difference comes in. And don't get me wrong, Ethan, I appreciate everything you're saying. The thing is, we got to look at the bigger picture as well, because somewhere in there, if it's not directly going to affect you, it's going to affect somebody you know. And if it's not affecting somebody that, if you or somebody you know, somewhere, somehow, some way, it's going to affect all of us. I mean, let's just be honest about it. I mean, we got to worry about right now, crime going up, holidays are coming around. People are in survival mode. James Battle, good morning, bro. People are in survival mode right now. And just to add this on to it, with the shutdown of the government after all this time of us trying to get our getting our footing back and continue to move forward, it's going to cause some problems. And if you notice, you haven't heard anything about the evictions. There's been no reporting about mass evictions or anything like that since they lifted the moratorium on that. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on with that, because those numbers haven't been reported yet. See, some things they don't want us to see, some things they want us to see loudly and clearly. But that's just how the system works. You know, watch this, but don't look over there. We continue to do it. But back to the Boebert and her campaign, taken from the campaign and then coming back and saying that I've already paid it. We know how the system works for certain people. We know how the system works when you're the one writing, when you got the pen to do and write these things into play, where there's no consequences to what you do. I continue to tell you guys, pay more attention to the people that you're voting for, do your research and everything. But what I'm finding out is that no matter how much research you do, it's just like any of us. We all have flaws. However, the extent of what your flaws are and what impact they will have on others is where the difference comes in. When we talk about the people that are up there writing these laws and legislation and things like that, and they have no interest of the people that they're supposed to provide interest for, that's where the issues start coming in. That's where the problems start coming in. That's where I will continue to talk about this over and over and over again. Ethan Johnson, we've had 20 months to reinvent the system and how things have been broken, but nothing has been fixed or reinvented. 20 months? Bruh, we've had hundreds and hundreds of years to reinvent these systems that we talk about consistently. The systems will only be fixed when somebody chooses to fix them, or when it is actually an impact on the certain people who have to fix the system, that they decide to fix the systems. That's the only way it's going to happen. And it's funny, man, and I appreciate that, because we talk about the system so much that it's become kind of blasé, just par for the course per se. Because we've gotten so comfortable with everything is about the system, but we never talk about the people that are in the system, just making the system worse than what it was from the beginning, or continuing to run the system the same way because it benefits them and they don't care who it hurts. Which leads me into my next thing. We're going to get off the money thing. The system. Let's talk about crisis for a minute. We always hear there's a crisis at the border. Oh, there's a crisis at the border. Do we truly know the meaning of crisis? Let me give it to you. A crisis, a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. A time of great danger, difficulty, or doubt, when problems must be solved or important decisions must be made. Now, there's 7 types of crisis: natural disasters, technological disasters, crisis of confirmation, acts of malevolence, which is malice, spite, hostility, hatred, hate, ill will, misplaced management values, acts of deception, management misconduct. Crisis, crisis, crisis. And we always hear there's a crisis at the border, not borders, border. So this week, we all seen it. We all see it. We all seen it at the border. The Haitian people, I'm not going to call them migrants, Haitian immigrants, and the Haitian people that were at the border. And there was a picture of, border patrol agents on horses, and it looked like one of them was using a whip towards one of them. They had one by the shirt, grabbing them. All the things everybody's seen the pictures. I don't need to describe it all over again. We've all seen it. And we all are in an uproar about what's going on with the crisis at the border. We had the same crisis not too long ago when he talked about the border with the people and the kids they were putting in cages. The difference in what we seen and what we chose to respond to was the difference in melanin content of the people that were being impacted at the border. Now, don't get me wrong. The visuals of the horseback looking like he's whipping somebody, using the reins to slap him or beat him or whatever you want to call it, are unsettling. They're unsettling for anybody. I don't care if it was a perception or if it was a reality, it's unsettling. And for people to just come out to just only debunk whether they were beating the people or was a whip or a rein from a horse, let that go. The perception of how the people were being treated should be your main focus. Whether they were being beaten, grabbed off a horseback, riding on a horseback, pulling somebody down, it brought back visuals of what we seen back during slavery. Let's just be honest. Let's be real about it. But the problem I have with it is how people came so quickly to the defense of that's not what happened. And you're not seeing what you're seeing. And the other thing that bothered me was the people who were so quick to jump in saying, this is what you are seeing. They were whipping them, whether it was with a whip or with the reins, they were beating and slapping and so on and so forth and whatever. But my biggest problem with it all is not the visuals, not the responses, any of that. My biggest problem is what the hell are we doing as a country to not see the desperation of the people at the border that they need help? Because I'm going to read something to you that many of you have heard many times before. They've always trumpeted it from the mountaintops and everything, but it's a whimper at this time with what we got going on because of the people that are in charge. And it says, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I light my lamp beside the golden door. Now, a lot of you may not know the whole thing, but you've heard it. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses. It's on the plaque on the Statue of Liberty. Statue of Liberty, the beacon of hope. The problem is you can't see the Statue of Liberty from the border. You can only see it from New York. So does that exempt everyone who's not coming from across the Atlantic? If you're not coming across the Atlantic Ocean, this doesn't pertain to you because you can't see the statue. So because you can't see the statue and the plaque on the statue, these things don't mean anything about you and your plight and what you're going through And while you're seeking asylum, and while you're trying to leave your country, and while you're trying to come to the United States of America for a better life, does this not pertain to those folks at the southern border, which we call more of a crisis? Just my perspective. And I understand everything we got going on here in the United States, from the pandemic to joblessness to homelessness. I understand all those things. But I will ask this question. When have we not in the United States had an issue with joblessness and homelessness and all these things? The only thing that's different at this time that makes it more profound is the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic at the same damn time. That's it. Joblessness, homelessness have been two key proponents of what goes on in this country for years and years and years and years. But we've never stopped immigration from happening in spite of that. And for people to now say that we don't want people coming in here and they shouldn't let these people here there, and they shouldn't let them in because of the coronavirus and they're going to spread it. Half of the people that are saying that haven't got the vaccination. They're not wearing a mask. Those are the same people that are these are the same people that have this misperception that what I want is for me and what they want, I'm going to dictate how they get it. Because for you to say that you don't want these asylum seekers to come into the United States of America because they may be bringing COVID with them, you don't even want to wear a mask. Oh, you don't want to get a vaccine. Oh, but I guarantee if you told them asylum seekers that the only way they could get in is if they had to get the vaccination and they had to wear a mask, they would put the mask on so quickly and show their arm where they could get a shot like that. Because what they're looking for is freedom. They're not standing on the fact that they have freedom and this is not why I'm going to do it. That's the difference. Privilege, privilege, privilege. But it's a crisis. Crisis is the key word. Ethan Johnson, there were private flights leaving Laredo, Texas, arriving at the airport in Western Maryland this week. Laredo was one of the locations where some of those that made in were taken for processing. How do you think these communities are taking their new neighbors? Let me just say this. They're not. Let's just be honest. I don't care what they say in front of a camera. I don't care what they say as far as politicians. When you talk about immigration, when you talk about crisis at the border, let's just understand this. I've never seen as much issue with people trying to get into the United States other than the southern border. You have people coming from Europe on a consistent and daily basis coming to the United States. You have people coming from Asia on a consistent basis to the United States. Not only looking, and they don't call it, they're looking for asylum because they're not fleeing a country that's in, poverty stricken or war torn or anything like that. They're leaving because they want to come here because they don't like where they're at. And they're given the access because they're coming on planes, not by foot. They're given access because they're coming in a normal capacity, not escapism. This is where the difference comes in. And this is why the immigration system needs to be changed, because we look at the people that are trying to come here differently, not because of how let me clear that up, because of how they look and where they're coming from. Central America, when you talk about the southern border down, those people that are trying to come look a certain way, and we got to be hesitant about that. But if they're coming from Europe, bring them in. If they're coming from Asia, as long as they have money to be able to contribute to the society and do what they got to do, they let them in. It's the impoverished countries, those that are fleeing, anarchy and all the different things you can think of. Those are the ones that are getting the most pushback. I don't make this up. Look at it. The opticals are there. And then when they talk about, what do they call it? Chain migration. When if you marry someone, you can bring their family over and things like that. There's no hesitation when it comes to that. But when you got people at the border that coming with children and things like that, we turn them away. Not because they're not worthy to be here, but because we choose not to let them in because of who they are and where they come from and what they look like. When we talk systemic, this is still an issue. It bleeds into immigration. It bleeds into our daily lives. It bleeds into the fact that we want, as America, to pick and choose who, not the process, but who is allowed to come into this country because we said so. And we're just as guilty as people of color because we get offended and start thinking that they're going to get more than what we got. James Battle. Was it proven that the Haitians at the Texas border brought over from Brazil after known racist Stephen Miller visited Brazil? Seems like the Florida border is closer to Haiti. I asked the same question, bro. I asked the same question. I'm just gonna keep it real. Haiti's an island. I'm wondering, how did they get from Haiti to Mexico? And then I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and I asked this question: when's the last time you heard about a raft floating over from Cuba to Florida and them picking up a mass amount of people that were fleeing Cuba? When's the last time you heard about that? Because you got to remember, these things come in cycles. At one time, back in the 80s, late 80s, I remember as a kid, I used to hear about the people on rafts and stuff coming from Cuba trying to get to Florida for asylum. Ethan Johnson, but the Afghans have arranged flights. Okay, well, I didn't want to go there, but since you touched on it, let's proceed. The same people that are complaining about the southern border are the same people that are complaining about the Afghans coming here as well, even though they're on arranged flights. They want to know why to bring them here. Why can't they go somewhere else? But they had no problem. They have no problem with the Afghans when they were helping us fight the war and being interpreters for us while the war was going on in Afghanistan. It goes into that old mindset of, what have you done for me lately? Let's just be honest about it. What have you done for me lately? You know, I truly believe in my heart of hearts, the immigration, asylum seekers, bring me, you're tired, you're poor, you're homeless or whatever. All these things that we hear the politicians and the news channels and the people you may talk to on a daily basis talk about, let them come and all this stuff. Behind closed doors, a lot of people can't stand what happens when it comes to immigration. They can't stand it. And the reason they can't stand it is, like I just said, they're more concerned about what they're going to lose than what they may gain. You don't, and I'll put it in this context. When they talk about, and this is going to be kind of a similarity, but not really, but I'm just going to put it out there for the impact. You know how we continue to talk about, and one of the big debates has always been about abortion. And one of the big questions about abortion is, I've heard someone say before that, you know, when someone chooses to do abortion, you don't know if you are aborting a future president, a future congressman, a future person who may be great in this life. But we always talk about the what ifs when it comes to abortion. But in the same breath, I would ask the question, what if one of those people at the border that you're turning away could become someone great in this country that they never had a vision for in the country he was in? He or she, let me clear that up. Because what we do is we get caught up in the fact of what legislation should be, rather than the reality of what we can see right now. What we see right now is the fact that we have thousands of people at the border trying to get away and trying to get to something better. And if your first impression of something better is how you're being treated at the border, how much do you want better? Because if I'm running from discord, government that's bad, all the different things going on in Haiti. Hell, they killed the president over there, and I don't see us doing anything about that, going in there trying to stabilize the government. But when these people are seeking asylum, we have a problem with that. If you don't want them to seek asylum here in the United States, fix the problem that's going on over there. We seem to do it everywhere else. We seem to go other places and kind of impose our will and make stabilize things, as we call it. Why not Haiti? Why not the Dominican Republic, who, Puerto Rico, after the hurricane came through, we went back and forth. That's a territory. Have we stabilized things there? Or we just throwing money at it? What are we doing? You can't consider yourself a world power when you use your power only when it's convenient for you to use it. Power should not be defined only by acts of war. Power should be defined as well as acts of compassion, to take care of those who need to be taken care of at the time they need to be taken care of. That's just me. Ethan Johnson, bruh. Bubba Kemp was the first in full support to bring the Afghans, but not people about the Haitians at the southern border. The same Bubba Kemp that has a big truck and was going to round up all the illegals himself. Yep, he said it. Crazy. I thought America was in Afghanistan because of terrorism. Sound like the terrorists are coming from the southern border by their accounts. Man, let this country shut down because of the division on Liars Hill. Yeah. You make valid points all the way through there, bro. Valid points. And I will say, I'm getting to the point where I'm confused. I'm confused on what we stand on. I'm confused at the principles on what we're supposed to be grounded in. Not as an individual, because I'm pretty secure in that. But as a citizen of this country, as a veteran of the military, of a man, let's just be real, of a man trying to do the right thing on a consistent basis, and I fall short. Let's just be real, I fall short. But I try my best, and even when I fall short, not to put the burden on the onus on someone else, burden or the onus on someone else, but to be accountable for what I do when I do wrong. Took a while, but I'm there now. But when we look at the things going on around us, it's hard not to be upset. It's hard not to put yourself in the place of those who are struggling. And just look around you when you come out of a store and you see the homeless person on the street, or you read about, like the other day I read about Michael K. Williams, who looks from the outside looking in, looks like he has the world in his hand because of his accomplishments and what he's able to do in front of a camera. And to find out that he had a drug intoxication of cocaine, heroin, and all the two other, fentanyl and one other thing, is how he died and how he left there. Those are the things that make you really sit back sometimes and wonder. Makes you wonder what's really going on. Let's go on to the mind, body, and soul. Let's go and wrap this up for the day. Mind, body, and soul 2021, taking it one day at a time. We're self-care, self-help, help somebody. Shoot, let's help somebody. But today's mind, body, and soul, it parallels on what I just finished up with before we transitioned. And it's very simple. When it comes simple, it may be very simple in the wording, but it's deep in the thought process. And today's mind, body, and soul is: take a look in the mirror. take a look in the mirror. I think sometimes we get so caught up in everything going on around us, and we have our opinions and how we feel about things and why this person should have done that, why this person should have done that, and all the different things going on, like we were talking about with the border and the people that are in charge and taking money and more concerned about self than what they went in there for we the people and all those type things that go on. But I ask each of you to take a look in the mirror. And when you look in the mirror, I don't want you to look at, looking pop a pimple or look at the visuals of who you are and things like that. I want you to look in the mirror deeply. And when you look in the mirror and you see yourself, I want you to look inside yourself. And as you're looking inside yourself, I want you to really dig deep into the thought of not where you stand, not what your opinions are, none of that. I want you to look deep in your soul to the understanding that we always say God is in control. And I've said this many times before, so this is nothing new to anybody. But when you look in the mirror, I want you to say God is in control. And then I want you to think about everything that's going on around you, from the border to what's going on with the debt ceilings, debt limits, all the different things that are happening. And then at the same time, ask yourself, what part do I play in all this? What part do I play in all this? Who am I in all this? And how can I become better in spite of all this? Sometimes I think we don't do that deep reflection of where we are, who we are, what's going on with us in these quote unquote crisis situations that are going on around us. Because if it's not impacting me and it's not of me, then it shouldn't bother me. But what we got to understand is whatever's going on around us, if it impacts one, it impacts all of us somehow, some way. Whether it's at the top of the chain or all the way down at the lower rung, it affects us all. So when you look in the mirror today and take that deep reflection, look within yourself. Because each of us have had an opinion about people at the border at some time, whether we agree with it, whether we didn't, without really looking at the fact of, and I say this a lot, you could have been at that border. You could have been this, you could have been that. When we look at the arguments back and forth about the vaccine, who's getting the vaccine, who's not getting the vaccine, why you're not getting the vaccine, everything, look within yourself. Because sometimes we got to do a self-evaluation, but sometimes we do the self-evaluation mentally. But we don't do the spiritual insight and the in look of who we are spiritually to get a true understanding of how we should stand and where we do stand on the issues that are going on around us. Because one thing that I know to be true is I've never considered myself to be a religious man. I've considered myself to be a spiritual man. People get mixed up in the spirituality and the religious aspect of life and thought. If you have any questions about it, look it up. But my spirituality tells me that if I'm going to speak that God created us all equal in his likeness, and understand that, because a lot of people always want to say, well, that's the religious part. No, that's the spirituality part for me. If we're going to understand that and speak that, we have to look in the mirror sometimes at ourselves in deep thought and understand who we are, where we stand, why we stand, and then have compassion and empathy for those who may not have or be able to stand in the same way. They may not have the same opportunities that you may have. But your compassion should give you the understanding that just because they may not have that you are no better than them. Because we always talk about every once in a while, we all need somebody to reach a hand out to pull us up, to help pull us up. We've lost that. And I'll leave it with this. Ask yourself the last time you heard someone quote this the plaque that is mounted on the Statue of Liberty. And then ask yourself, when you come to the conclusion that you ain't heard it in years, many years, ask yourself why. You'll come to a very quick conclusion why. Because that quote plaque that's mounted there doesn't stand for what it used to when certain people were coming to the United States of America for freedom. Just my thought on that. Ethan Johnson. Love you, bro. Didn't mean to get you off track today. We had to ask the hard question and hold those in leadership accountable somehow. Headed down to the J6 rally to observe, be safe. Nah, bro, you good. You good. I need that feedback, man. You didn't throw me off. This was unscripted today, so you was right on time. I appreciate the input, man. Like I always say, if I don't have somebody to give me some input, then it makes it seem like I'm always right. I'm never always right, but I do know a little something about something. That's all it takes, man. That's all it takes. I appreciate everybody tuning in today. It was an unscripted Saturday. Hopefully you got something from it. I know I was all over the place, but this was something that I didn't want to seem, just going and reading today. I wanted to come from the heart. I wanted to come from the mind. I wanted to come from the soul. That what's going on around us, we need to really pay attention to and look at. Pay attention to and look at. And not just look at it for what and how it's going to impact you, but look at it how it's going to impact those that you may view differently only because you don't know who they are or where they come from. We're all guilty of it. We've been there. We've done that. It's just who we are. Our human aspect causes us to do these things. But our human aspect should also make us get into the mirror sometimes and look at ourselves and delve into who we are, what we stand on, and what our flaws are. Not for the visual, but for the spiritual and the mindset. We're not 100% okay or all right all the time. But until you do that introspection, you'll never know where you need to work on. Statue of Liberty was a gift from France for the slaves of America. Yes, it was. Yeah, and that plaque that I talk about, Statue of Liberty has no inscription on it. There's nothing written on the Statue of Liberty. This plaque was placed on the Statue of Liberty after the fact because someone came up with it and they put out this big thing about it should be supplanted there. That's why those words are on the Statue of Liberty. The only reason. OT, great show. Appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you. And I'll be tuning in a little later for David Arnold. As I said, OT has got a show today with comedian David Arnold. I think it's at 12:15. Make sure you tune in. 12:15 Eastern. Make sure you tune in. Listen, he's a funny dude, man. Not OT. No, OT's funny too. But David Arnold, he's a funny dude, man. So if you want to tune in, listen to his stories and everything, go ahead and do that. I appreciate everybody tuning in. And as I always say before I sign off, love yourself, love one another, keep your head up, and most definitely keep your faith in God. I'll see y'all again next week. I'll holler at you. Peace.